Hey everyone, in today's episode we're going to interview one of my close friends. Her name is Mel and she started her own design firm about 8 years ago with a completely distributed team around the world. This girl has been to so many countries, way more than I have, and she's just out there traveling, being a powerhouse woman, and I cannot wait to share her tips on how to run a remote company successfully, how to travel the world as a single woman, and how to just kind of live a badass life. Like, I think she's really awesome. But she's also being hired right now as a consultant and an expert speaker on how to run remote companies, because she was doing this 8 years ago, way back when everyone else didn't even know what remote work was. So this girl has an edge on everyone, and I cannot wait to share her tips with you. Also, just to let you guys know, Mel recently came down with leukemia at 29, and it's kind of breaking all of our hearts. So I'm going to put the GoFundMe link in the bottom of this interview, and I hope that you can contribute to help her. She was visiting her boyfriend in New Zealand and found out that she had leukemia, and her travel insurance only covers the first round. So let's jump into the episode, and I will see you guys on the other side. Before we get started, we just want to give a shout out to Office R&D, who is our sponsor on today's episode. They are a co-working management software company that helps workspaces around the world deliver better experiences to their customers. They share our values of promoting and championing remote work, and they've been our biggest supporters since day one. Okay, so let's continue. I'm more than thrilled to sit down and interview you, Mel, and I want everyone to know about you because I think you're a powerhouse woman that and I think that we need to talk about it more and really share about what it's like. So just to give everyone a framework, right now we are in the Swiss Alps, sitting in a chalet. I always say it wrong. Chalet. Yeah. 5-minute walk from the ski slopes. And I met Mel when we walked into the co-living space, Swiss Escape, and I said, oh my God, we're gonna be friends. And then we haven't had any time to even really talk yet. So I'm excited to hang out tonight more. Yeah. But just to give everyone a framework of a little bit background on you, where are you from and what do you do and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I'm from Singapore and I run a remote design and growth studio. So we do a design and growth for a lot of digital products. Mm-hmm. So we've been around for the last 7 years and a bit, which always makes me feel really old saying that. And we've just worked with companies from all around the world. Since we're remote as well, it's just opened up a lot of opportunities for us. And we've worked with a lot of startups. We've worked with companies like Visa and Samsung and McDonald's. And it's just been also super interesting having a team that's just spread out everywhere. You get that insight into all these different cultures and different behaviors. And also designing for markets that you don't get access to. One of the clients that we've worked with for a long time, they're based out of Myanmar. And so you get to see, it's really interesting because you get to see how that market has developed ever since you've had more investment coming in, more money coming in. It's just the market's just opened up, and you just get these insights that you just wouldn't get if you were just in one spot. So
and cool. Just to be completely clear, it's your company, right?
It's my company.
Okay. Yeah. Can we give a plug for it? What is the company called?
Oh, yes. I should have said that earlier. Yeah. So my company is called Melewi. It's Melewi. Melewi. Not to be confused with the country, Malawi.
So it's Melewi.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been running your company for about 7 years?
7 years, yeah.
And how many years have you been running it remotely?
All 7 years.
So you've been traveling pretty full time for 7 years.
Yeah, actually it's been 9 years. So before I started a company, I was a freelancer, still doing the same thing, but I kind of, the 7-year mark for me is when I started hiring the team and just kind of being a lot more, I want to say, proper about doing it. So I've been doing this design thing and this remote thing for 9 years now. So it's close to a decade.
So what made you do it remote? Is there a specific reason, or is it just because you could? Just tell us what sparked it.
Kind of. So the way I always describe it is that it's quite accidental. In that what happened was that when I graduated in Singapore from what we call a polytechnic, which is tertiary education, but it's not a degree. So the next step for a lot of people is to go to university, and I just didn't want to go.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to do the whole wake up early, show up somewhere, have someone tell me to do something or not do something, tell me when I can leave. And I was just like, I kind of just wanted that autonomy over my life, just, you know, back to myself. And so I refused to go to university. I refused to get a 9 to 5 for the same reason. My parents were flipping out because they're like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Like, you know, why
so
are you
against
not going?
Everything Singaporean.
Pretty
like,
much.
Culturally.
Yeah, like everyone was doing that, you know, like everyone I knew was doing that. And I just didn't want to do it. And I just really put my foot down and I was like, not doing it. But I still had to pay the bills. So I ended up doing some freelance design. I didn't actually study design, but an opportunity sort of came up where I had a friend who had a brochure and I looked at it and I was like, that looks like crap. I can do better.
I love it.
So I did it for free. And then he was like, oh, there's something here. And he started referring me like a couple of clients. And the very first client that I had, I was so inexperienced that when they said like, okay, great, send us an invoice, I was like, what's an invoice? And so...
And how old were you at that point?
I think I was about 20.
Yeah.
19 or 20. And so they had to send me an invoice template and then I just had to like copy that and like replace the numbers and like Photoshop out the brand and everything and send it back to them. So that was how I started becoming a freelancer. It was again kind of by accident, and then it just kept going and just kept going. And one of my freelance clients gave me a job offer, but part of that was to move to Vietnam because the company and the studio was like based in Vietnam. And I still didn't really want a 9 to 5, but at the same time I was like, oh, this is exciting, it's new, it's Vietnam, I've never been there before. So within a week of getting the job offer, I just upped and moved to Vietnam. Like a week later, I was just there surrounded by crazy traffic and chickens and chaos and blackouts and just being like, whoa, this is awesome. So I loved being in Vietnam, but I just didn't like having that job. I didn't like having that 9 to 5. It was more like an 8 to 7 there. And so when I left, it was only like 2 months after starting that job. And when I left, my parents were like, great, come back home. And I was like,
not doing that.
I think I'm just going to stay right here for a while. So I did. I stayed in Vietnam. I went back to freelancing. And then while doing that, I just realized that none of the clients that I had were in Vietnam. Like they were all in Singapore or in Australia. And it was just Skype calls and emails and just me working from cafes. And then suddenly I was like, oh, I don't actually have to be here. I can be anywhere, so why not? So then I just started like hopping around with my laptop, just being very like, you know, bright-eyed about the whole thing and being like, life is awesome and this is great, and just hugging my laptop, just like making sure I don't lose it into a river on a boat.
Seriously.
And
and what year was this? Because this is way before digital nomad or anyone knew anything.
Before it was like, I never heard of the term digital nomad. I never heard of the term remote working. This was in 2011.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
A long time ago.
That's so cool. I mean, I totally resonate with that because when I first started working remotely, it was for a law firm that I was working for in the States. And I just told them like, I'm moving to Costa Rica. Do you want me to like keep going? And then I was in this small surf town where I was the only woman and the only one working on my laptop. So everyone just thought I was crazy. Everyone was trying to sleep with me or they were like confused by me. So it was just like the weirdest thing. And it was like back in 2014 when no one...
It still wasn't really a thing.
It wasn't a thing, you know, and Wi-Fi was not stable at all. So super stressful, but I think that's cool that you can just like do it. I almost wonder what makes people like us be like, because people call it crazy, but I didn't find it crazy. For me, I didn't think that there was another option. Like I was like, I'm doing this. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to make this work. Is that how it was for you? Yeah, a little bit. It was just sort of, I think growing up, I always felt like I didn't really fit into the norms of what was kind of expected of me. And growing up, I really struggled with that because it felt like there was something wrong with me. But then you get so used to that being the norm that after a while, people just don't really care that much what you're doing, or it's just sort of like, yeah, okay, sure. But I think a big part was just, it felt like I finally got my life back. And it was now like, you know, mine, and I got a say in, and I got to sort of like drive that forward where I wanted to go. And a huge part of that was like why not? It was like blissful ignorance, you know? And I think part of that was just no one was really looking at me to fill a certain set of shoes or to do something. And so in a weird way I had like some freedom, but I think
a huge part was, it wasn't that I was gunning for something. It was that I was really adamant about not wanting to do the things I didn't want to do.
Ah, gotcha.
That was it. I was just like, I'll do whatever, as long as I don't have to do that and I don't have to show up at 9 and I don't have to clock in and clock out. Like, I would do just whatever it takes to not have to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's a similar thing for you as well.
For sure. I think I actually went along the path that everyone wanted for a while.
Yeah.
I had a house, a dog, a husband, like a full-time job in a law firm, and everything was perfect on paper.
But you didn't.
And I was like, no, like I felt like I was living someone else's life.
Yeah.
And then I felt guilty about that. I felt like, well, why can't I appreciate this?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I think that is a different person back there than I am here. So it's just interesting. But I wanted to quickly talk about the remote team thing, because I know you had mentioned briefly before that people ask you a lot about how you built your remote team. Yeah. Was that intentional for you to hire people all over, or how did that get started? Yeah, it was, again, it started out being fairly self-serving. Mm-hmm. I had, as a freelancer, I just had so much business that I couldn't handle it. Like, I was burnt out. I think at one point I had like 20 clients at once, and it was just insane. Like, that's crazy. And you know, as like a freelancer, you're always worried about when work is going to come in and if there's going to be cash. So whatever comes in, you're like, yes, I'll take it on. I'll take it on. And then suddenly you're like, oh no, I can't take it on. It was just too much for me. And people kept telling me that I needed to hire, but I was like 21. Yeah. You know, like I could barely be responsible enough to pay my rent. Like being someone else's manager or boss, like, this sounds too adult for me. But after 6 months of just being burnt out and not being able to like manage, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to give this a go. And part of the reluctance was because I thought I had to do the grown-up thing and then like move somewhere and settle down and rent an office and do all these things. And I just, again, didn't want to do it. Yeah. And so when I started hiring people, I was like, you know what? Like, if I can be doing this on the road while traveling and still have too much work, I don't see why this can't continue. And I love this lifestyle and it gives me so much. Like, I don't see why anyone else shouldn't be able to have that as well. So it didn't even cross my mind to be like, you know, like, oh, this is risky. It was just like, oh, okay, why not? So, you know, I just drafted up a job description and I wrote it to be the sort of job description that I would like dream to read. And it was all about that sort of teen culture, that environment, that lifestyle, and doing like cool work and learning and progressing. And then I just put it up there, and then from there interviewed people, hired them. I was in Singapore for a bit and then just got kind of like the cabin fever. Almost like suddenly leave my apartment because I was working so much. So eventually just left as well. And then the next hire after that was completely remote. Hired her without even meeting her. And then from then on, it just kept like continuing, and we just kept improving the way that we would hire people, the like whole interview process, onboarding process. And for some of the jobs listings that we put out, we would get like 800 applicants. What? Yeah. That's amazing. It was insane. Like, we couldn't find emails that we needed to get to because it was just like we were just flooded with just application after application, and we had to find a way to vet that without talking to like 800 people. And so we iterated up on that process, and you know, it's fairly intense now. A big thing that we do is that with the application, each person has to also submit like a video introduction, like nothing fancy, just sort of like, hi, telling us a bit about themselves. And then they go through 3 rounds of interviews, and if all that works, we pay them for like about a week's worth of your time, put them on like a trial project where they get to meet everyone on the team, and you get to run through like a feedback cycle, iteration, and then a presentation. And then by the end of it, that gives us like a real solid clue, you know, is this person really who they say they are? Do they work the way that they say that they do? Yeah. And we ask everyone on the team as well, like, how do you feel about this person? Can you work with them? Because at the end of the day, like, they're the ones spending the most time with them. For sure, yeah. And if anyone says no, we don't hire them. So how many people would you say roundabout that you've hired over the years? Over the years? Like, hired and have had to let go? Just anyone that you've hired. Like, how many people have you hired? Just around about over 20. 20, yeah. Yeah, over 20. And how many people do you have on your team right now? Now we have 7. Nice. Yeah. So it was a lot of learning through the years of like what works, what doesn't work. And a huge part of that was learning on my part as well. Because
wants to be
We're just
boss.
figuring this out. Yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't set
Yeah.
out to be like, I'm gonna be this and I'm gonna be this kind of boss, a leader, a manager, and I just had to make all those mistakes
For sure.
along the way as well. And so, you know, a lot of those things not working out was because I also had to figure out what I needed to do.
I completely resonate with that.
Hard lesson.
Like
hard
wanting
lesson.
to be a certain person for someone, but then also having to be their manager, and
Yeah.
also like we can have the best time together, but if you're not getting your work done, it's not going to work out.
Yeah,
Like all of those things. Oh my God, it's the hardest thing.
Yeah, there's so many things at play and so many things to balance, and then you have to be like self-aware, and then you have to like progress, and it's a lot of self-development, I would say. And I think that's like one of the hardest parts as well.
So people are coming to you and asking how to run remote teams. Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
So tell me more about that.
It's just a lot of questions, especially since like in the last few years, remote work has just kind of like really exploded. And in the last like 9 years, it's been learning to work remotely. In the last 7 years, it's been how to manage teams, set things up, have a good team culture. And for me, I feel really lucky that I've managed to attract a bunch of people that are just awesome.
Yeah.
Like they're really good at what they do. They're really great with everyone on the team in general. Like we just have such a good vibe and such a good culture that it's almost like I step back and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. You know, like you just get this sense of like, oh, that's really awesome. And a lot of that really has to do with getting things set up. So it's a lot of stuff that people don't necessarily find very like sexy. It would be operations and systems and workflows and spreadsheets and like recurring calendar invites, and again just being like super intentional about keeping all those things running like really well. And as a result, like I don't really have to be present to make sure things like happen or go well or go smoothly or have a great team culture. And that took like, you know, 7 years to get there. But it was just being like super intentional about that. So just having like, you know, a team and a company that's just running really well with a good team culture and remotely as well. I think that's what a lot of people end up like being really curious about. Like, what are
you doing? Tell me more about that. Can you help us? Are people coming to you asking for consulting on it?
People come and ask for advice. I haven't like turned it into like a coaching consulting thing, although I would like to explore that just because it's always been fun giving advice. But like, you know, a 30-minute chunk of advice is helpful, but like a longer term thing, you can really start like making changes. I haven't really gone into that yet, but I would actually really like to.
Well, we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah, we should.
That's how I started my consulting company. Is I didn't mean to.
I did want to ask you questions about
people
that.
just kept asking me, and I was like, I can't keep giving this away for free.
Yeah.
And then I realized people, like, I started just throwing numbers out there of like, would you pay for this or whatever? And people were like, yeah, how do we pay? And I'm like, wait, what? You would pay me to just tell you things? And it was like the funniest thing ever for me. So, but okay, so the last thing I really want to talk to you about is being a woman entrepreneur. So that to me feels like a very loaded question, but also like one of the most important things ever is how is it for you in this industry, being a woman, being an Asian woman and a petite Asian woman, and just being like
young looking one.
Like you were saying the other day, like people assume you're younger just because of the way you look. But how is that for you? There's so many things like I'm going to ask, but I'm just going to ask that first.
It is, I think the first thing is like sequentially, it started out being the most frustrating, demoralizing thing that you can have, because basically like every single time I walked into a room, every single time I tried to have a conversation with someone, straight away you're like being dismissed because they just don't assume that anything good or useful is going to come out of you. And it's just so frustrating when that is just like blanketed, especially before, you know, we've had that credibility, before I've had that reputation, that brand, that history that I can use to like prop myself up. It was that I had to change each individual person's mind that I'll be someone good to work with if they gave me the chance to do that. Only if they gave me the chance to do that.
And why are you the one that has to prove that?
And then, I have to prove that as well. And it's like, it's not just that you have to do sales, because sales is part of it. But it was literally just like having a conversation with someone at an event. And you could like literally see the disinterest and they're like being just like polite to you. And then once you start talking and you start putting out things of substance, you can see the change in demeanor. You know, they go from being very like yeah, okay, sure, to like, oh really, oh, do you want to come and, you know, talk to my team about stuff? Do you want to come, like, maybe we should talk about how you can help us? And it was like that switch, it was so frustrating, but at the same time it's like, yeah,
Yes.
you know you know now, you know, it was so like satisfying to have that, but at the same time it was just like you just had to pick yourself up off the ground all the time, again and again and again. And in tech, like, everyone knows it's quite male dominated, you know, and on top of that, all the stuff that you said, like, I am short, I do look young, you know, and also the fact that I'm an Asian person that grew up in Asia. Like, I was born in Asia, I grew up in Asia, and all those things just tend to work against me, which is super frustrating. But then at the same time, it's like, all right, I'm gonna prove you wrong. I'm gonna like double down, work harder, get somewhere, and then you're gonna see. And that was not the healthiest motivation in the beginning, but it was like, it just sort of like lit that fire, and I was just like, I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
And now, like, it's had to make that shift into something that's a bit healthier, which has been hard work sort of getting there, but like that was the start of my journey, you know, and that was what like really, I think, propelled me forward and kept me going all this time. But it was tough. It sucked a lot of the times.
What do you wish that you had known back then? Like something that you know now that helps make it easier, that you wish you could have told yourself back then?
I think I kept thinking it was me. Anytime that someone didn't, you know, wasn't very open, or was dismissive, or was rude, or was condescending, or I got the condescending thing so much. I had people telling me like, oh, you have your own company, that's cute. Do your parents help you with the accounting? You should get their help. I'm sure they would love to help your daughter.
Oh my God, you sounded so Singaporean when you said that.
Yeah, that was, I got that so much, you know, and it was just so, I'm
already feeling it right now.
It just made me like so angry. But I didn't like, I think I'm actually also really privileged in having grown up in Singapore, because in Singapore, like, I never felt like my gender was used against me. Obviously, I never felt like my race was used against me. I never felt like my size was used against me, or my age, or anything like that. And so I was just really sheltered in thinking like, I'm just like everyone else. I get these equal opportunities as well. And then you kind of move into this world, and then people are like, no. And I thought it was me. So for the longest time, I thought that I was the problem, and I felt so alone in that, you know, and it was just a lot of like internal sort of like, what did I do wrong? Like, why is this happening to me? And if I could go back in time and talk to myself back then, I'd be like, yo, it's not you.
Yeah.
This is just how it is. A lot of people face it, even people who don't look like you. Like, everyone faces prejudice of some sort, a bias of some sort. You're not the only person. Like, don't shit on yourself. Yeah. You know, like, that's what I would go and tell myself, so I would just spend less time just feeling really bad. Yeah. And that was, you know. I totally resonate with that, because I think in my own way, like, you waste, not you, but like a person can waste so much energy thinking like, what the heck is wrong with me? Yeah. Instead of like, no, there's something wrong with them, and I'm gonna fight extra hard and prove them wrong, you know? Because that's when you feel almost like empowered. You're like, no, I'm doing everything right, you know? And then they're gonna see eventually, whether it's now or... I've actually had times where people didn't want to work with me, and then later on they came back and asked if they could work with me. Yeah, that is like a very good feeling when they come out of the woodwork and they're like, yes. And I'm like, I don't think we resonate. We mesh well, we fit. I don't think we're a good culture fit. But yeah, I just think that there's so much can be said on this subject that I am even thinking of creating a whole like sub-series of just women entrepreneurs, because I wish that was there when I was first starting out, you know? Me too. Because so much of my stuff has been finally realizing that I could be the one doing it on my own, versus even just having someone there as like I've always started things, but I've always had like a guy around, like even if it was like moral support or emotional support. And now I'm like, I don't actually need anyone. It's nice if they're there, but I have all the skill set and the tools to do everything myself. Just that confidence in yourself that you don't need someone else to like, you know, be your face or like push you forward or be whatever. But yeah, something like that I would have loved to have had. And I think part of that is also just that validation of how you feel, and that it's just not you. You know, like if I had heard, like, you know, like sometimes you bring these things up, and if somebody hasn't experienced them, they're going to be like, I don't get that. Like, what? Maybe it's something that you should change this or you should change that. And then you feel like, well, what? Like, what's going on? Yeah. And if I would even just hear that other people, like other women are going through that, then I don't feel alone anymore. I don't feel like this is something that I'm fucking up and I need to fix. It feels like, okay, this is the situation. I'm not alone in this. I don't take it personally. I find ways to get past it.
For sure.
But I just didn't have that back then.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
we were
rough.
even talking about women traveling, like when we were in Morocco and we first got there, and like the guys wouldn't even look at me. And like I'm the negotiator in our relationship, and they kept turning to John and saying like just trying to negotiate. And you were saying that happens to you all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like people, you would pay for something and someone would come and give the money directly.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, and it was just so frustrating because again, I just thought that it was me, you know, like that was like my first thought process of that. But even then, like I spent most of my traveling time like just traveling alone, like just doing solo travel. And in some places you just really don't feel safe, or people feel like they can take advantage of you, or people treat you like, sometimes people treat you really special, you know, which like, you know, being a bit of a hypocrite, like, oh, that bit's kind of nice. And then other times people single you out because you're traveling alone. You look young, you look naive, whatever. But it actually got to a point when I was traveling alone, like a few things happened and I just really didn't feel safe walking around. So I started to carry a knife up my sleeve when I was like walking around.
Wait, what country were you in at this point?
I was in Cambodia, and then after that I was in Europe. I was in like Paris.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just like there were specific things that happened that made me feel like, okay, this is how I die. Like I'm like fucked now. This is bad. So I started like having to do that, you know, just carry a knife up my sleeve. But then at the same time I was like, just because I'm scared because other people have made me feel scared doesn't mean that I should stop doing it. Like I'm still terrified to step out of the house, but I'm gonna fucking do it anyway, because who are you to make me not do something because you've made me feel scared, you know? So I'd be like nervous as fuck just like even leaving, but then I would just make myself do it. And the knife in my sleeve would be like a little bit of a comfort to be like, well, if shit really hits the fan, then at least I can defend myself or like react in some way, even if maybe I don't win at the end of the day. Yeah. But it was just, there's just so much that comes with like being a female traveler, but then also being a solo female traveler, and then also being like an Asian solo female traveler. And there's just so much that comes with that territory that it makes it really tricky.
But what I think is awesome is that because you've done it for so long, there's so much that you could share with other women who are thinking of traveling, or like you were saying, if they have traveled and had bad experiences and they think, what's wrong with me, you know? Yeah. So you just saying that right now is going to resonate with someone, and they're going to be like, oh my God, this is what I needed to hear, you know? Yeah. So that's a big reason why we're doing these series, is because I really think it's going to help people. So anyways,
I hope so.
I think you're going to help people. So I think we'll wrap it up there. I have so much more I want to talk to you about after the video ends, but thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk to me.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
Thanks, Elle.
Yeah.
So you guys can see why I love her so much, right? Like, she's like this tall and just like a fierce powerhouse woman out there, just going into different situations that a lot of women probably would shy away from. And she just kind of is like, no, I'm showing up and I'm going to do it. She also has legitimate and amazing experience running her own company and doing it fully remote. So I hope that these tips helped you, because they really were inspiring for me and very practical. If you liked the video, hit like at the bottom of the screen. Remember to donate to her GoFundMe if you can, and also just send her some love. She could use all the love in the world right now. We love you, Mel, and I hope to see you guys all in the next episode. So see you later. Bye.